Thank you very much, Rich, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to address you today. The point that you just raised, that the only prosperity, the only sustainable and real prosperity is shared prosperity, is the essential message I want to talk about today. I'm an economist. I study how economies work and don't work. Like a doctor, we try to understand why our patients sometimes are sick and what we can do about it. One of the reasons it's being so sick is inequality. And I decided to write an article and a book about it. 2 years ago, I wrote an article for Vanity Fair, not the usual place for academics to publish, but it did get more readers than my earlier articles in Econometrica. The title of the article was Of the 1%, For the 1%, and By the 1%, which really got to the gist of it. For too long, hardworking, rule-abiding Americans have seen their paychecks shrink or stay the same, while the rule breakers raked in huge profits and wealth. It made our economy sick and our politics sick too. You know the facts. While the productivity of America's workers has soared, wages have stagnated. You worked hard. Since 1979, your output per hour has increased 40%, but pay has barely increased. Meanwhile, the top 1% take home more than 20% of the national income. The Great Recession made things worse. Some say that the Great Recession ended in 2009, but for most Americans, that's simply wrong. 95% of the gains from 2009 to 2012 went to the upper 1%. The rest, the 99%, never recovered. More than 20 million Americans who would like a full-time job still can't get one. Incomes are still lower than they were a decade and a half ago. Wealth in the middle is back to where it was 2 decades ago. Young Americans face a mountain of student debt and dismal job prospects. We have become the advanced country with the highest level of inequality, with the greatest divide between the rich and the poor. We used to pride ourselves. We were the country in which everyone was middle class. Now that middle class is shrinking and suffering. The central message of my book, The Price of Inequality, is that all of us, rich and poor, are footing the bill for this yawning gap, and that this inequality is not inevitable. It is, as Rich just said, and he said yesterday, like the weather. It's not like the weather, something that just happened to us. It's not the result of the laws of nature or the laws of economics. Rather, it is something that we create by our policies, by what we do and what we don't do. We created this inequality, chose it really, with laws that weaken unions, that eroded our minimum wage to the lowest level in real terms since the 1950s, with laws that allow CEOs to take a bigger slice of the corporate pie, bankruptcy laws that put Wall Street's toxic innovations ahead of workers. We made it nearly impossible for student debt to be forgiven. We underinvested in education. We taxed gamblers in the stock market at lower rates than people who work for a living, and encouraged investment overseas rather than at home. Let us be clear, our economy is not working the way a well-working economy should. We have vast unmet needs, but idle workers and machines. We have bridges that need repair, roads and schools that need to be built. We have students that need a 21st century education, but we are laying off teachers. We have empty homes and homeless people. We have rich banks that are not lending to our small businesses, but are instead using their wealth and ingenuity to manipulate markets and exploit working people with predatory lending. It is plain that the only true and sustainable prosperity is shared prosperity. If we could ensure that everyone who wanted a job and was willing to work hard could get one, we could have an economy and a society that is both more equal and more prosperous. To achieve that, we need to grow our economy. But while we can't do that when paychecks are growing, and while insecurity is growing, with looming cuts in Medicare and Social Security,